Hello, everybody. So, welcome to this webinar. So this is the Stats of AI webinar on AI and statistics. This is a brand new seminar series that the Stats of AI ASA interest group is organizing. So first of all, a little bit about ourselves. I will drop some links in the chat. So we are an ASA interest group. We have this website, statsofai.org, that I just dropped that you can check, where our goal is to promote the interaction of statistics and AI and empower statisticians to be more successful in this new changing era. So everybody is welcome to join our Google group. I will post the link to the Google group right here. And if you are an ASA member, you are also welcome to join our interest group. So of course, you have to be an ASA member for this, but it's here. We, for the last year, we have been running a webinar series on biomedical, data science, statistics, and AI. It's been really quite successful in my kind of evaluation. We have gotten, I think, more 700 people, individual people overall to join, and it's from more than 100 different organizations, and it's really quite diverse. So now we are excited to start another one. And for this one, we kind of started a little bit more generically, not just biomedical science, but anything that's at the interaction of statistics and AI. So and we are also constantly looking for feedback. So I would like to give you a post here survey that I would like to ask you to take a look at and fill out about what you would like to hear about. In any case, all that kind of out of the way, I'm very happy to say that we have Dr. Mine Çetinkaya-Rundel to be our first speaker for this seminar series. So Dr. Çetinkaya-Rundel is a professor of statistics at Duke University. She is a professor of the practice, and she's also director of the undergraduate studies, as well as the director of the first year experience in Trinity College of Arts and Sciences. She has done a lot of pioneering work on statistics and data science pedagogy and education, especially in regards to computing, reproducible research, and student-centered learning, as well as open source education. So she regularly contributes widely used R packages for data science education, as well as contributed to popular open intro statistics textbook for as kind of widely used and open source textbook. So today she's going to talk about leveraging LLMs for student feedback in introductory data science courses. You can ask small kind of questions, clarification questions during the talk, but please hold your bigger questions for the end. So Dr. Çetinkaya, the floor is yours.
Thank you very
Please mute
much.
yourself, and I will mute. I will mute people who are unmuted now, right here. Yes, please.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Let me go ahead and share my slides and get started. So as Edgar said, I will try to keep an eye on the chat for any sort of clarification questions, but there should be ample time for more discussion at the end. So I want to share a project that I've been working on over the sort of like a year and a half on and off, but really managed to implement it in my teaching last fall. So I'll share some feedback from it as well. And overall, the theme is getting help from AI for students, whether for asking questions or getting feedback. I have here the link to the slides, and I'll flash that at the very end as well. If you would like to get the slides, you'll be able to do so. So I want to start with some sort of motivation. I read, just like we all do, whether we want to or not, lots about AI and how it's affecting our lives. And one of the articles that stuck with me was published last year, a Microsoft study that finds AI makes human cognition atrophied and unprepared. Let me read an excerpt from it for you. A key irony of automation is that by mechanizing routine tasks and leaving exception handling to the human user, you deprive the user of the routine opportunities to practice their judgment and strengthen their cognitive musculature, leaving them atrophied and unprepared when the exceptions do arise, the researchers wrote. How does this apply to me? I am an educator of stats and data science, and my primary focus over the past few years has been teaching introductory data science. And I often get asked the question, now with all the AI things happening, particularly LLMs for code generation, is there really need to be teaching introductory data science, or will AI do all of the work for us? And my answer is I think there is. First of all, introductory data science is more than writing code. So there's a good reason for that. But even the act of writing the code can be instrumental for students in terms of sort of structuring their approaches, thinking, particularly statistical thinking as well. And there is lots of routine tasks that we teach in an introductory data science course. And I still firmly believe that there is room for teaching these things, even with all the development around code generation via LLMs happening. Here's another post that stuck with me. This author, who I wasn't familiar with her work, but the social media post did stick with me, says, you know what the biggest problem with pushing all things AI is? Wrong direction. I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. And I thought about this because one, yeah, I would like AI to do my laundry and dishes as well. But number two, as an educator, what is my laundry and dishes? And part of it is grading. I think it is so important. Grading is so important because it's where we provide feedback to students. But it's rarely the most joyous part of my teaching. The in-class interactions with students, the late night hours looking for a new data set, writing up slides or examples are a lot more joyous for me than doing grading for, the same question over hundreds of students. So I had been thinking about, is there room for AI to help me with a little bit of that, but also being wary that grading ultimately has the grade associated with it. And I'm not yet ready to offload the grade itself to AI, but I was thinking, is there room for AI to generate some feedback perhaps? So how can AI support student learning instead of help them take shortcuts in their learning, which is what I routinely observe students doing when they are turning to AI tools. And I believe a lot of fellow educators feel similarly as well. The context of what I'm going to describe is an introductory data science course that we've been teaching at Duke for years. I've developed this course, but we've had many instructors teaching it as well. It's called Intro to Data Science and Statistical Thinking, and you can see the link to the course website here if you're interested in taking a deeper dive at sort of what happens in the course. The textbooks we follow are bits and pieces from R for Data Science, Introduction to Modern Statistics, and Tidy Modeling with R. That should give you an idea that we start with a bit of sort of data visualization, exploratory data analysis, and then we go into modeling and inference. And for the modeling and inference piece, we use tidy model syntax, and in general, the tidyverse syntax flows throughout. Work is done in Quarto documents for every single assignment or exercise in RStudio with R, and students also use version control via Git and collaborate and host their work on GitHub. The AI policy in this course is as follows. It is okay to use AI tools for generating code, but you must explicitly cite it. And then we give some guidance for how to do the citation. I've redacted that here, but you can find that in my syllabus. We also say the prompt you use cannot be copied and pasted directly from the assignment. You must create a prompt yourself. I'm not sure necessarily that students always follow this. I bet some of them do sometimes copy a homework question and paste it into ChatGPT, but we've asked them as part of their citation to share the prompt with us and link to the actual chat thread. We don't necessarily check every single one of these citations, but at least they know that this is something that they're having to share along with their work. We also said AI tools for narrative is a no-go. We said unless instructed otherwise, you may not use generative AI to generate a narrative that you would then copy paste verbatim into an assignment or edit and then insert into your assignment. I find this space a little bit tricky. I most certainly do not want students to be offloading interpretation of output or statistical decisions to AI. However, many of them use AI, maybe even without realizing, say as part of spell check or grammatical corrections. So the thing I'm trying to get here is that we don't want you to copy paste output from ChatGPT that is text. However, hopefully this policy leaves the door sort of open for if you have something installed on your computer that's sort of checking your English, that's probably okay. And finally, AI tools for learning. You're welcome to ask AI tools questions that might help with your learning and understanding in this course, and then some narrative around don't believe everything it says. I'll share a tidbit here. Quite a few of my students have mentioned to me that when they're studying for an exam, they say, here textbook, all the textbooks are open source, so they can sort of like point to it. I don't think that's exactly how just pointing to a URL is not going to read the entire textbook and provide the context for the LLM, but they sort of like point to chapters and say, prepare some questions for me. And on one hand, this seems like a creative use of AI. On the other hand, it's a little bit risky because it, creates some questions that may not necessarily be what the focus of the course is. And if they were just paying attention to what we emphasize in the class, that would probably be a lot more informative. But that aside, ultimately, this AI policy is a little all too optimistic. So we're still working on this, but my firm belief is that telling students you cannot use AI, period, is not necessarily going to work. And the last thing I want to be in the classroom is the police of whether students are using AI or not, but instead trying to teach them to use it responsibly and efficiently and in a way that doesn't offload the thinking, but actually maybe augments their learning. So the first project I embarked on with this sort of motivation in mind was a chatbot. Not that anyone needs a new chatbot, but bear with me, that hopefully generates good, helpful, and correct answers that come from course content and prefers terminology, syntax, methodology, and workflows taught in the course. Now, I know better than anybody that getting into the chatbot game with the big LLM companies out there, that's not for me to do. These technologies are sort of like developing faster than I could ever catch up with them. But the goal was to sort of leverage the open source models that are out there already, but augment them with course content and try to prompt them under the hood in a way that when a student asks the questions, not at chatgpt.com, but in the course chatbot, they actually are getting sort of phrasing terminology that feel familiar to them from the course. Technically, what we basically did is we used a RAG to focus chatbot on course content and give it context, and we obtained pointers to specific pages of interest in the course textbook. So based on this, we created a knowledge graph, which is searchable and traversable, graph database of subject, predicate, object statements from the text, and use semantic similarity for search. The relevant content from the textbooks were identified by combining the semantic similarity and the knowledge graph searches, And then we embedded this course chatbot into the learning management system for the course so that it's only available to students in the course. And that's really a cost issue. That's really an access issue. We are limiting access to the chatbot for course students, but this was a project supported by Duke, and they were happy to sort of support it, not for the whole world, but instead for the students in the course. Here is sort of a visual representation of what's happening under the hood. This is not anything we expect the students to ever be thinking about, but I thought it's a nice sort of piece of visualization to share, that we start with PDF documents of course textbooks. So these are open source textbooks, so we're able to sort of grab the information from there. We create the knowledge graph based off of those, and this lives in a database. When a student then asks a question, so that's the user query, we're querying the database, and the chatbot creates a response and also gives some metadata as well, pointing the students back to the pages of the textbook that the written answers were harvested from. So let's take a look at what this might look like. I'm going to ask two questions. One of them is a little bit lame. What is the difference between linear regression and multiple regression? And here is an answer that the chatbot gives, but you can see that in addition to the answer, it also points to pages from the textbook. And the goal here is hopefully that when students realize every time they ask a question, they're being pointed to a particular page or chapter, they might pause and go back and read that. Let's ask another question. This is, how do you read data from an Excel sheet into R? So more of an R coding question. And here we can see that the response it gives is sort of styled similarly to how I write code in my slides. And it is pointing to pages from R for Data Science, which is one of the course textbooks, so that students, so that students can actually go and read about that in the textbook. This was helpful for sort of paving the way for the second project as well, which I'll get to in a second. So in the second project, leveraging this sort of chatbot experience, which was, I will say, helpful to students using it, but also because it was embedded in the course LMS, it simply wasn't something students turned to a whole lot because they were thinking, well, like I have ChatGPT open anyway. I don't need to go into Canvas to do these things. And the user interface for the chatbot wasn't as nice as some of the more modern sort of LLM interfaces, although students have informally commented on enjoying that it pointed them back to book pages. So for the second project, what we did was to then create what I will call a feedback bot that hopefully generates good, helpful, and correct feedback based on an instructor-designed rubric and suggests terminology, syntax, methodology, and workflows that are taught in the course. So let's take a look at the motivations behind that. The first one is my motivation to try to disrupt something. So an increasing number of students use AI tools as a first step before thinking about how to approach a task. And I want to be able to wiggle my in there. In there, meaning between when they read the prompt, the exercise from the homework, for example, and when they start typing things down. Can we stop them from copying and pasting things whole hog as a step one into ChatGPT and then thinking about the result it gives them, and instead making them pause, try on their own first in a manner where we assure them that we will be able to give them immediate feedback. Number two is leveraging what the work that I was already doing that I know a lot of fellow educators are already doing as well. We use Gradescope at Duke for grading, which is particularly helpful for large courses. This course that I'm talking about has 300 students in it. So I write very meticulous rubrics for TAs to do the grading for course assignments. These rubrics are pretty detailed and honestly very resource intensive to write. They take a lot of time. They need a lot of thinking in order to make sure that my TAs, ranging from second-year undergraduates to PhD students with varying levels of experience with statistics and with TAing, can all follow the same rubric and try to grade as consistently as possible. So they're very articulate rubric items, and the idea was, what if we gave the rubric items to an AI as opposed to humans, or in addition to humans? And shifting resources, a lot of the TA time is dedicated to grading, but I was thinking, can AI help TAs redistribute their time towards higher value and what they report to be more enjoyable touch points, which is interacting with students, and away from repetitive and error-prone tasks, much of which go unread? Because that's the other thing with grading. We end up not being able to get these graded assignments back to the students any faster than a week. And even a week is enough for students to sort of forget about why they put down an answer the way they did. And a lot of the feedback goes unread, particularly if the number of points lost are very small, but they might still be sort of important learning opportunities. And finally, self-care. Neither the TAs nor I want to provide detailed feedback to answers generated solely with AI tools. So when we have a homework assignment that is worth, substantial chunk of the student's grade, many students turn to LLMs to help them with their homework, and sometimes that helps, takes the place of actually doing the homework for them. And to provide feedback to something the students haven't even written is not a great way for us to be spending our time. And frankly, they don't get much out of it, because if they haven't written it in the first place, what are they going to do with the feedback that we give them? So what we have done is we have leveraged the model that we were already hosting that was augmented with the course materials to say, instead of students asking questions via a chatbot, could we prompt the same LLM to give feedback to the students? In order to do this, I've built a question bank in the back end of the questions that I give the students as homework. And also in this bank, put some rubric items that go with each question, and written a custom prompt for the LLM to intake the student's answer and the information from the rubric, bring these together and provide feedback to the student in the IDE. And then the students can edit their answer and then resubmit based on feedback. So they do this real time and can get feedback as many times as they want. Here's an example of what this prompt looks like. So on the back end, we're using the Elmer package for sort of speaking to the LLM API. And we grab the question from the student, and we grab the question from the question bank, along with a detailed and a simple rubric. I'll talk about those in a second, what the difference between those are, and the student answer. And then we give a system prompt. I've shared here a shortened version of the system prompt. There's a bit more to it, but I wanted to sort of fit everything into one slide. But this took a bit of prompt engineering to ground the feedback bot in order for it to give useful feedback. So we say something like, you're a helpful course instructor teaching a course on data science with the R programming language and the Tidyverse and Tidymodel suite of packages. You like to give succinct but precise feedback. And then we basically say, carefully read the question and the detailed rubric, evaluate the student's answer against the detailed rubric to provide feedback, but format the feedback as bullet points, mapping to the bullet points in the simple rubric. The detailed rubric has answers embedded in it as well, but when we show the feedback to the student, we want to say things like, the slope coefficient is not correct, as opposed to the slope coefficient should be this value, for example, so that they're prompted to try again and run their feedback through again. Here's a quick demo of like what this might look like. A lengthy question, but too long, didn't read. It says make a box plot and identify outliers from the data. Here is what the rubric looks like. As you can see, it's detailed. I don't expect you to read through every single one of the rubric items. The important thing is that it has bullet points, and this is very similar to what rubric looks like in Gradescope, where students are getting graded as well. And here is what it looks like, the student experience. So as you can see, they are in RStudio. They are writing their homework in a Quarto document. And once they write the answer to a question, this was question 2, they highlight the question. They go to the add-ins and say get feedback. What this is doing is using an R package that I've developed that sort of launches this Shiny app in the viewer. It has some instructions on it, and the students need to input the homework number and the question that they want feedback on. You can also see that what gets sent to the LLM as the student's answer is copied from what they highlighted. So we don't want them just like typing things into this box and trying things out. We want them to actually continue to work in the Quarto document, which is how they're doing all of their reproducible data science work. And we capture that in the Shiny app. And then they say, okay, I want to get feedback on this. It takes a little bit to sort of query and get the feedback. And what we can see here is that the feedback is formatted with bullet points that we have seen, looking at the simple rubric. So, and then it gives them some yays or nays and some explanation as to why yays or nays. And then it also summarizes the overall feedback to say you're doing well. You're doing well. Overall, you're doing a good job, but maybe you want to ensure clarity on this and that. And students can do this as many times as they want, and they can do it without ever leaving the IDE. So they're continuing to do their work and getting real-time feedback. Let me get this started back up. They can then close and choose a different question. And similarly, for any question that they're working on, they are able to get feedback. Obviously, you can see that this tool is very customized to the course. So it's looking at, this is not just getting feedback from any LLM, but getting feedback from an LLM that's hosted that can query the course question bank with the correct answers and the detailed rubric so that it gives them custom feedback as opposed to them just sort of pasting their answer into ChatGPT and saying, did I do a good job? The feedback tool itself, as I said, is an R package that really contains a single Shiny app that launches in the RStudio IDE's viewer. But if you're interested in taking a look at how that was built, the package, it's not on CRAN. There's more improvements that are needed to it that I'll talk about in a bit, but you can find it on GitHub and you can take a look at how that implementation was done if interested. Now let me give an example of how did this actually play out in the class. So I'm going to give you examples from 2 homework assignments. The first homework assignment was basically telling the students, part 1 of your homework is feedback from AI. We will not be grading this. It's only for practice, and you get immediate feedback with AI based on rubrics designed by the course instructor. You can do this in one document. You don't have to submit anything. Part 2 was basically regular homework, saying, do the homework, submit it, we'll grade it for you. That's, you're going to get feedback and you're going to get your grade based off of this. So with this approach, we were able to reduce the grading down to 50% for the TAs. But of course, this is counting on students doing part 1, which as you can see is optional. Many students did do it. We were able to at least check commits to the part 1 to just see if they have skipped over it. And some students have skipped over it because in this structure, nothing on part 2 depended on part 1. but many students reported doing part one because they wanted to get accustomed with how their work was going to get evaluated and get some feedback along the way. That worked nicely for homework one, but come homework two or three, we were seeing that students were basically skipping over the AI feedback questions in the interest of time. And this is not an overwhelming majority of students, but some students, let's say. So a little bit later in the class, I changed things up a little bit. I was sort of trying to see if this is something we really want to keep implementing in the class. How do we want this to play out? So another thing I did then was saying part one, it's still not going to be graded. It is for practice, but it's a prerequisite for part two. Because in part two, we're going to ask you to summarize your experience, and you need to have gone through and to be able to answer that question, which is going to be graded for us. Throughout the class, I played with a few other things where the AI feedback question, for example, would be cleaning up a data set. So we weren't grading it, but they really needed to do it in order to do the question that was actually going to be graded, so that they were still getting to do all the homework questions that we wanted them to be doing, but getting immediate feedback on some of them. And in order to, fully acknowledging that this feedback tool is not going to behave perfectly, just like no LLM does, to reduce, hopefully, the frustration of getting feedback that is not correct, and also to see if the students are paying attention to it and to motivate them to pay attention to it. I also had an extra credit component to every homework assignment saying, if you catch the AI making a mistake, write a case study for me. And I asked them to actually write this, print it out, and bring it to the class. I haven't gotten a lot of submissions, but my TAs have said that maybe the amount of extra credit wasn't a lot. So if I thought that this is a productive way to go about things, I might up the points on that a little bit. But the submissions that I did get throughout the semester were definitely well done. These were students really sort of scrutinizing the AI feedback, highlighting, but I did do this. I feel confident that my answer is correct. It's still reporting this. They've also sort of informally said that it made them question other things AI tends to spit out, which is, I think, healthy attitude to have. So some takeaways as we wrap things up. About the process, it was a lot of fiddling with the rubric files in order to get feedback that I felt was consistent from one try to the other, somewhat consistent that is, and also sort of actually helpful. But it was a little unclear and hard to measure to what end do we want to be playing around with rubric files. I want the rubric generation for being able to be used with such a tool to be no more work than the rubric generation for human graders. Because if it is going to be more work, what's the point? We might as well ask the humans to be doing this. So I think sort of your experience with writing clear rubric items would definitely be important for being able to implement something like this successfully in your course. Just like with humans, with the LLMs, if there is sort of unclear rubric instructions, it tends to give not very helpful feedback. I also realized sort of during the process of developing this that separating out a rubric simple and a rubric detailed really helped hide the answer while also giving constructive feedback to students. So I ended up writing 2 versions of each of the rubrics. The good, initially in my system prompt, I had spell out your reasoning for how you decided this, but this was resulting in feedback that's way too long that I figured no student is going to read. But taking out anything and saying, please provide succinct feedback. And I've even experimented with word limits, character limits. It really helped. And providing things like that to the system prompt really does work. So that was encouraging to see. Now, a little bit about the bad. I think the most concerning is that the feedback tends to catch errors, but not the good, and seems to reiterate the rubric item, whether it's met or not. So it might potentially cause the student, like who's already prone to this, to think there's no winning here. I would say this is a little bit on par with working with perhaps an inexperienced TA who is not seeing the bigger picture, but looking at matching every detail of a student's submission to the rubric and pointing out sort of even minor discrepancies, even if whether they matter or not. The inevitable was that there is inconsistency in the feedback from one try to the other. So you can highlight the same answer, run it, get feedback, highlight it again, and it might give a check mark to a different set of items. It does pretty good job, but I wouldn't say 100% good job. I would think that different humans would have similar results as well. And as someone who, has TAs grade the questions, but then I look at sort of inconsistencies between graders, this is sort of replicated with humans too, but it would be nice if the tool was a bit more consistent. So a question that is yet to be answered is it possible to instill confidence in students when the feedback changes at each try on the same answer? I'm not sure. And also sometimes hallucinations happen. It says things like your code uses the base pipe and includes necessary spaces, but it lacks indentation, which can be improved for readability, even when there is no problem with indentation. I think it sort of just like regurgitates what might seem like reasonable feedback, even though when there aren't such issues in the actual submitted answer. So we need better system prompts to be able to or better context under the hood to be able to give better feedback around this. And finally, text that would cause more problems get injected. So it says sometimes things like aligning with rubric expectations. I think if I was a student, I'd be really annoyed if that's the kind of feedback I got because I don't get to see the rubric. How would I know what the expectations are? So I've also built in throughout the development of this tool sort of more of this sort of context into the system prompt saying, please do not use these phrases when you write the feedback. And if you can identify things that you know are going to be headaches, you can get rid of them. But that's also a never-ending game as well. So a little bit student feedback. They really love the immediate feedback in the IDE. And I want to pause here for a second and say that I know that working with an AI tool is not the only way to provide immediate feedback. I could actually write tests and ask the students to sort of like send it to tests, but those are a lot harder to write when we're talking about narrative, not just code. So providing code feedback by writing tests is doable. And a lot of my computer science counterpart educators definitely do this. But any question that we in my stats department ask in a data science course is not just about the code, but about the interpretation of the results as well. And that's much harder to write tests around. It's also it's also going to be hard to update the questions if every time I write questions, I have to write the tests as well, versus rubric items are a lot easier to update. So that was sort of the two main reasons for offloading this testing to an LLM as opposed to sort of writing tests myself. It's helpful as a quick iterative checker for nitty-gritty specifics, formatting and code style, and clarity and precision of narrative. So it's really good as a first pass reviewer, even though it may not be, obviously it would not take the place of having a genuine conversation, maybe in office hours with a student about an answer they have written and providing more holistic feedback. Some students also commented that it's too picky, and that's absolutely true. They sometimes comment that human graders are too picky as well. So I would say not much difference there. It is not as helpful as instructor or TA feedback in office hours, as I said, because it doesn't always point to specific issues, and currently in its design, follow-up is not possible. So revisiting these motivations, I think we managed to do a bit of this disruption. I don't think students were actually copying the questions, pasting them into ChatGPT, getting the answer from there, putting it into their Corto documents just to get feedback basically from ChatGPT again. They actually were writing these things because these were not graded questions. The student who wanted to sidestep that would basically be not doing it anyway because this is not a graded part. I was able to leverage rubrics that I'm already writing and shift some resources. Grading hours reduced thanks to this, and we were able to add more office hours. Did we necessarily save ourselves from providing detailed feedback to answers generated solely with AI tools? Well, in the other half of the homework, there's still a little bit of that. And I'm not sure that, this project was going to solve that entirely anyway. So next steps, I want to continue model evaluation as these, newer models become available and sort of do a study of trade-offs between cost, speed, and accuracy with different approaches. There is more work to be done in prompt enhancements and tuning. I'm seeing a question in the chat from Peter around, are we only changing the prompts with more context, or are we giving the bot custom training data from the best TAs? I have not given training data, so that's a great idea, and that would be part of the enhancements that we can do as well. I'm working with a student on enhancement this semester, so that's something we can incorporate into our workflow. Another thing that students have actually commented as feedback on the tool that we would like to incorporate is sort of bring these two projects together. So right now, you can ask for feedback, and then the next thing you can do is update your answer and ask for feedback again. The next time you ask for feedback, it's a new prompt, so it's actually not remembering what you had done before. I think a nicer thing that could be closer to a human interaction in say office hours could be for the student to see the feedback, maybe make some updates, maybe ask for feedback again, but in the same thread, but also have a little chat box appear that says, can you say a bit more about why did you say this? So this is going to be tricky because we know how sort of obliging LLMs can be. They tend to say things like, oh, good idea. Oh, yes, absolutely, my bad. So I think we would want to tread lightly here, but being able to have a continued conversation around the first set of feedback can be an interesting area to explore. So that's one thing that we'll be working on this semester. And I want to do a bit more on the tool itself, sharing and documenting it, and also expanding it to work with other backend. Right now, it's only designed to query the model that we are locally hosting here. But obviously, for this package to genuinely be useful, it would need to be able to talk to any LLM. And obviously assessment. A lot of what I shared in terms of student feedback has been based on my experience teaching it for a semester with this tool. We want to be able to assess learning outcomes for students using this feedback tool and evaluate if this approach is effective for a variety of goals. I've put effective in quotes because in no world am I even like dreaming that I would say, oh, this tool made sure that they learned data science so much better, or that they achieved all the course learning outcomes. That's not the goal here, but I think there is a more scoped goal that we can evaluate, that is their experience with doing homework, time that is how they feel about the immediate feedback and whether that's actually helping them learn better and gain some confidence around their answers. And I think most importantly, at least for me, is sort of wiggling my way into that space between when they first read an exercise and when they start writing things down. Are they going to an LLM, a separate LLM for help immediately, or can we get them to pause and think and try on their own first, which is what I would love to see happening. I want to acknowledge huge contributions from Mark McCahill, who is at Duke OIT. He's a computer systems architect there who has worked on the back end of the models, building sort of the knowledge graph and hosting the models. So I've worked on all the things that the students see on the front end, but he maintains the back end. And thank you for listening. The slides are at the link that's shown on top of the slides here, and the images throughout the talk were generated by ChatGPT and iterated on by me a little bit. I've moved them around and added some more components to it with Keynote. But if you're interested, if you go to the slides, you'll be able to get to the actual ChatGPT thread where I asked it to create these images for me. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer questions. I can pick the first one up if you want from chat, Edgar.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for a great seminar. And please feel free to answer the questions. I think the first question, so one of them you already answered. The other one is, are the activities done during class or outside of class?
These were done outside of class as part of the homework assignments. Now, the way we have structured the lab, so we have a weekly lab for this course, and the way we've structured the labs is that students actually come to lab and do hands-on activities where they genuinely need to collaborate with each other, and those are scoped to be finished during lab time. And some of them were a little bit shorter, such that students managed to get started with the homework assignment. And particularly for the first homework assignment, we had the TAs demo how to use the tool. So they did a little bit of that in the class. But in general, this majority of this happened on their own time when they're working on homework outside of class.
Another question is, at the bottom line, the students need to be well equipped with R Markdown, and other tools, but some senior professors feel terrible about them.
Yeah, the course is teaching them these tools. So we start, the course is designed for students who have sort of no exposure to, no prior coding experience, no prior statistics experience. So they do get very comfortable with all of these tools, but by the end, and not as comfortable as you can imagine during the first homework assignment, obviously. And some faculty don't use R, some faculty don't necessarily teach with R Markdown or Corto. That is true, but that's sort of the learning goal of the class has always been to teach these tools anyway. This particular sort of LLM supported tool is just for providing feedback to the students.
So another question, if this works well, are you considering just having the homework completely ungraded, or do you believe students should always earn credit for this back and forth with AI/rubric?
So two things here and maybe a clarification. When the students, for the questions where students got feedback from the AI and could go back and forth, those particular questions were not graded by the TA. So each homework assignment is 10 questions, 5 of them ungraded, but you can get immediate feedback from the LLM. The remaining 5 are graded. I think in one of the homework assignments, I just sort of like played with, you can get feedback first and then you can also get it graded as well. I was just trying to, trying out a few things, but in general, the design was not to make the work redundant. Should all homework be not graded? Maybe at a time when I feel a little bit better about the consistency of the feedback, potentially. I will mention that a separate project I am working on right now with some collaborators from Berkeley is actually using AI tools for grading. In fact, there are a few startups. I think one of the ones we're working with is Pensieve, that do pretty much exactly this, but actually give a score as well. And we're working on a project. It's in early stages now, but hopefully some manuscript will come out of it sometime during 2026, comparing that feedback and the grade given by the AI tool to TA graders, which are, I wouldn't say all experts because they come from like various experience levels, and expert graders. So we are actually doing the grading on the same set of questions as well and comparing them. I think maybe as more studies like that happen, if I at some point feel like we really can offload this to the um, to an AI, then I'd feel better about not giving human feedback. But based on where this tool is right now, I think human feedback is still helpful.
You. Another question from Tianj. Do you envision that we consider as essential data science skills to change how AI could be a data scientist toolkit? If so, how would an intro data science course like yours change its curriculum?
Um, I am sure. I am sure that what we consider essential data science skills will change. Um, I do think there is still value. Like that's sort of what I was trying to say at the very beginning when I said there's still value in doing the grunt work of sort of like repeating tasks that might be considered smaller tasks to sort of start to wrap our heads around like what do we actually want to do with the data? What do we want to get out of the data? I don't have a very concrete answer to how would this curriculum change. But I do think that it will. One of the ways that I have I have changed the curriculum is I have injected more into it um, about how to more effectively use AI tools. And it's not just to scare them, but I do give them examples of where it gets certain things wrong, but with the goal of getting them to scrutinize the answers they get and getting them to sort of think with it, try out the answers that it gives you, like even something as simple as run the code it gives you. Don't just believe that that's going to work. So a little bit of what has changed in the curriculum is adding some components of how to use these AI tools effectively for data science work. But I'll also be the first to admit that I don't, as of today, feel like an expert on that myself. I am also learning. So I want to say time will tell. Um, and how do we convince the students the value of what we teach them? I would say the way they convince themselves is when they do the data science project at the throughout. It's such a semester long project. It's not just like a couple weeks at the end, but they do their presentation towards the end of class on a data set of their own choice, trying to answer a question. And they, one, enjoy that experience and also can actually put the skills they have learned into use. They then maybe get an internship or work on a research project where they are using these tools as well. It's at that point that I can convince them that what they're learning is valuable. So as long as data science work, actual data exploration, modeling, getting sort of inferring um, something about the data based on the results the computer is spitting out at you and making decisions based on those data is part of our lives, I think they will continue to remain convinced what we're teaching them is helpful. One way that I think assessment will change is how honestly we give partial credit. Because in the past, my approach to partial credit has always been that if some effort has been put in, let's reward that. And now the amount of effort it takes to get, partial credit worthy answers is very different than when you even had to scrounge through Stack Overflow posts. I don't have concrete guidance on how to go about that, but that's certainly something I'm thinking about.
Few more questions.
Um,
Yeah, after going through
yeah.
this project, do you feel more or less hopeful about helping students learn coding in an intro data science class so that you and the TAs don't have to be the AI police?
We have chosen not to be the AI police in a way because I've realized that that actually just makes it very unpleasant to teach the course. So as I said, they are allowed to use AI tools. They just need to cite them. What I will say is having taught this class multiple semesters now in sort of LLM era, the more guidance I have given to students about how to cite AI tools, the better the outcome has become for them to actually cite it. And the more they're actually doing the citing, the less policing we need to do. So we can just sort of like gloss over that and actually give feedback on the content that they have submitted. Um, I think whether people are using AI to sort of replace the things they should be learning, like replace the hard work of learning, that's a much bigger problem, bigger than data science itself, and one I'm still grappling with. So I would say it changes day to day how hopeful I feel about that. I do think it is perhaps harder to motivate the students who might be in the classroom not because they wanted to be, but because of a requirement. But I think AI isn't the first sort of thing that has made educators question that. I think we've had other advances in the past that has similarly made us question that as well.
Another one,
Um,
you mentioned that the AI policy is still being tweaked. Could you please share a bit more about what worked and what didn't with the AI policy that you had?
Yeah, so for example, one thing I'm doing this semester that I didn't do last semester is to have a specific AI disclosure for every single question on the assignment. I'm saying on every single question as opposed to an overall one because our TAs grade question by question. So I want to make sure that the person grading it can see sort of the citations or the disclosure that goes with it. This AI disclosure idea is something one of my CS colleagues here at Duke, Kristen Stevens Martinez, had mentioned. I've heard it talked about in other contexts as well. And the idea is actually put in the homework template a place for them to explicitly say, I haven't used AI tools, or to cite what they have done and in what capacity they have used it. So the way I was doing it was if you have used it, cite it, but otherwise you didn't have to do anything. Versus what I'm going towards now is to explicitly say, I haven't used it, or I have used it, and here is how I have used it. What I'm seeing reported by other colleagues is that this is a little bit better. Anecdotally, I will share, I had a student tell me when I asked them, why didn't you cite this? Like, you're allowed to use it. Why didn't you just cite it? They said, well, I use it so much that I was feeling embarrassed about it. And that's a heartening thing to hear. But also, you would hope at that point the student would come to you for help as opposed to try to hide what they're doing. So I am hoping that by making them explicitly say, I haven't used it, they will be more keen on citing it if they have.
The last question that we have posted here is, if I choose to use AI feeder in my introductory statistics course with 60 students, what components should I prepare, replace, questions, rubrics, etc.? How much time does it take?
Um, so the first of all, the question bank, because currently it is hard coded sort of, well, actually, you would need to create your own question bank with the rubric items. And if you're interested as an educator to see what my question bank looks like, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to sort of like share. It's a private GitHub repo, but I'm happy to share that. The currently in the AI feeder package, the model it is sending the API calls to is hard coded. So you would take that out and send it to another model. You could, like we have done, have a locally hosted model that has been augmented with course materials. You could also experiment with one of the freely available models out there and see, like, given your rubric, and not necessarily maybe some context from the course, but not an augmented model. How does it do? And I firmly believe that the better these LLMs are getting, the less need there might be for the augmentation.
Right. So I think we're getting close to the 1 p.m., but there's two quick questions that get posted. What advice would you give fellow instructors who plan to adopt something like this in the future?
I think where I personally feel like we're at a stage of experimentation. So where possible, be open-minded for experimentation around this. I think just saying don't use AI is like not realistic for work, particularly taking outside of class. So thinking about, is there creative, joyous things we can do with AI in the classroom? I think is the one piece of advice I would have. And the other one is please share your findings, whether that is, a scholarly article or a webinar like this or a blog post or whatever, but we're all grappling with all of these. And I personally find it really nice to hear what other instructors are doing.
Great. And the final question, if you can quickly answer it, what gets uploaded to Gradescope for human grading? Does it come directly from a QMD file or an HTML output?
Yeah, so Gradescope likes PDF, so students render their Corto files to PDF and they upload those and they mark the pages with each question that it refers to. We also have a part of the homework grade depend on things like workflow. Code style is something that the TAs can see in the PDF, so that gets graded in Gradescope. But we also look at, have they committed the files to their GitHub repo? Do they have thoughtful commit messages and stuff? And that's something we actually query the GitHub API to sort of collect data on. So the collective homework grade of the student is what the TAs have graded, and then some points that we calculated for them based on their interactions with the GitHub repo. And I use the GH class package for querying the GitHub repos and get the data out of them.
Great. Thank you very much, Mina, for really inspiring webinar and very helpful information. I think it's extremely timely. And the number of questions really, I think, conveys, I've never seen so many questions basically in my life. This really conveys how much people are interested in this topic. So thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you everybody for attending. I dropped the link for our next webinar. It's going to be February 11. James Zhou from Stanford will talk about something related to AI-enabled science. I hope to see many of you at that time. Thank you again for attending. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.